Hello, I'm Mauricio José Suárez, and this is From the Outside. You've probably heard that Catalonia, an autonomous community in Spain, wants to be independent, or rather that some people in Catalonia want to be independent. This is not new. There are more than 50 independentist movements today only in Europe. The Bavarians in Germany, the Venetians in Italy, the Frisians in the Netherlands, the canton of Jura in Switzerland, and curiously enough, the Valley of Aran in Catalonia, which has vowed that if Catalonia ever becomes independent from Spain, they will become independent from Catalonia and remain in Spain. But since the autonomous government of Catalonia decided to proclaim independence on October 10th, they are in the news and not the rest of the independentist movements. So the question is Catalonia oppressed and enslaved by the evil military power of a foreign country? Or is the story a little bit different? Of course, there are good motives for many regions, countries, nations, peoples to try to become independent. Unfortunately, none of those seems to apply to Catalonia. Catalonia was never an independent state. It was in the Middle Ages a group of counties under a principality which were vassals of the king of the Franks. Then they became a part of the crown of Aragon. And when Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella, the Catholic kings, married and joined their crowns, they created basically what today is Spain, and Catalonia was an integral part of this new nation and remains so today. After the Civil War, in which Catalonia fought on the Republican side, the dictator Francisco Franco, the last of the fascist governments until his death, during a long dictatorship that lasted from 1939 to 1975, when he finally died, he led an attack against regional and local identities and languages. Catalan was forbidden to be spoken or written, and Catalonian traditions and culture were repressed. So this created and fostered a nationalist feeling, which is pretty reasonable. But after the death of Franco and the end of his fascist regime in 1975, Spain created a constitutional democracy in which its historical regions, the areas that had their own cultures and identities, became autonomous communities. There are 19 subdivisions in Spain, 16 of which are autonomous communities, and Catalonia is one of them. These are communities that, besides having their own cultural development and traditions, they now have their own laws in their statutes of autonomy. They have their own government and are self-governed in a large part. They have local parliaments, but they also are represented in the national parliament at both levels, Congress and the Senate. They control within their territories things such as healthcare, education, the public media, and they have their own police forces. And besides Spanish, there are at least 7 other languages and other dialects in Spain. And 3 of those languages are official languages in their regions. Catalan is one of them, a long way from being a forbidden language to being an official language in Catalonia. So Catalonia is not different in that respect either. All Catalans have the same rights, freedoms, and obligations as any other Spaniard, including me. They pay the same taxes, they have the same legal protections, and they have no more obligations than the rest of us. All of this legal framework, established in the Constitution, was voted in a national referendum in 1978. The country was coming out of a dictatorship and wanted a new beginning. The Constitution was approved by a large majority of the Spanish people. In Catalonia, it got 90% of a yes vote, even more than in Madrid. 90% of Catalans in 1978 accepted being ruled by the present Constitution. Article 2 of the Constitution establishes that this legal framework is based on the indissoluble unity of the Spanish nation. This means that you cannot legally declare independence. The strongest independentist drive in Catalonia comes from the right wing and the wealthy, who claim they pay too much taxes and don't get enough in return. This is obvious. Catalonia is a rich region and some of the taxes are used to pay for services in the poorer regions of Spain. This is called fiscal redistribution of wealth. And calling it stealing or robbery, because they say Spain steals from us, calling it stealing is something that Ayn Rand would say. When you pay your taxes, it's not like you're buying a sweater from Amazon. You are contributing to the wealth of all. Opposing this fiscal idea basically translates into screw the poor. In 2015, Catalonia elected a parliament where independentists won the majority of the seats, but not the popular vote. Think Donald Trump here. They are 300,000 votes away from a majority. Nevertheless, they chose to call a referendum for the independence of Catalonia. This referendum was called illegal by the lawyers in the Catalonian parliament itself. It's not something that came from outside Catalonia. They said this is illegal. They went ahead, and on October 1st, they had a referendum with no guarantees whatsoever, no voter census, and no independent oversight. They made up the rules of the referendum as they went in the 2 or 3 weeks previous to the referendum. And of course, they gave no voice to the opposition. The independentists set up the ballot boxes, wrote a question, took the votes, with many reports of people voting several times, and then they counted the votes with no one but themselves watching. Guess the results. The Constitutional Court of Spain found that the referendum was illegal, and a judge from the Catalan Superior Court ordered the ballot boxes to be seized by the police. The police, unfortunately, in some cases, as they are wont to do, and we know it, went overboard and committed acts of police brutality that no one is defending. They should be tried and they should be punished for exerting excessive violence against the people. But in the rest of the cases, the police were only carrying out the order of a judge of seizing the ballots and stopping an illegal and irregular vote. The independentists claimed that 2 million people voted in favor of the independence, but the voter turnout was only, if you believe their numbers, 43% of the registered voters. And people opposing independence did not vote. They considered the referendum to be illegitimate and illegal and did not want to legitimize it by going and voting. And others were simply scared of voting because independentists knew they were against the independence. These very unreliable results were then used to absurdly and illegally declare independence. This prompted the enforcement of Article 155 of the Constitution. This article states that if an autonomous community does not abide by the Constitution, the Senate can vote to enforce the rule of the Constitution in this autonomous community. This is not only legal and fair, but reasonable. If you go against the law, there are mechanisms to make you abide by the law. So with a Senate vote, the national government dissolved the Catalan government and scheduled an election for December the 21st, which the independentists have accepted. Some independentists on the government and the parliament have been arrested, but not by the executive, not by a dictatorial president, not by an authoritarian government, but by the judges who have charged them with rebellion and with misappropriation of funds. They're accused of taking more than 400 million euro from social services to fund the referendum and its support infrastructure. An important thing, of course, the current government of the Popular Party, which is not popular at all, Partido Popular, is highly questionable. Its name is false. It's a pre-modern right-wing party with no social conscience whatsoever, heavily influenced by the Catholic Church, populated by people and ideas that still come from the dictatorship, and it's scandalously rife with corruption. There are hundreds and hundreds of politicians from the Popular Party which are indicted or in prison or accused of the most varied acts of corruptions you can imagine. But this is beside the point here. The drive for independence is not against the Popular Party, it is against all of Spain. It is against the laws that have ruled the country by the consensus of all, and which have brought the country from a horrible dictatorship to a modern state with rule of law and a reasonable democracy. The law would be the same no matter who were in government. Right wing, left wing, center, if there is any such thing as center. So the majority of the parties in the left and the right agreed to uphold the rule of law and support the enforcement of Articles 155 in the Senate vote. But maybe Catalonia should be independent. There's a way to do it. Amend the constitution, change Article 2nd, establish the rules of how a region or a group of people could declare independence. Who would vote in a referendum for that? How many people should be in favor of independence for it to be legal? 3/5, 2/3 of the people? 50% plus 1 is probably too tight, too shaky. People change opinions easily, just look at Brexit. So with clear rules, legal rules, you can become independent. Perhaps they should try it. I will not even go into the idea that nationalism is completely opposed to any enlightened idea, any liberal, progressive, left-wing idea that people are and should be equal, and that we should be destroying borders instead of creating them. That it is cruel to take a society of working people, of middle-class people, of people, and tell them you should not struggle together for better laws, better government, better services, a better future for you and your children. You should be separated into two different nations and go against each other for the rest of time. This is terribly cruel, and we have seen it when nations have been subdivided in recent times, like it happened in Yugoslavia. But I won't go into that. Catalonia can be independent, they just have to do it right. This is a view from the outside you probably haven't heard about. So remember, it's your opinion that counts. Just make sure it's based on facts and evidence, not whim and misinformation. Thank you for watching.